have you again on our new interview series. To give you a bit of context and background, we're working with various key actors across hydrogen and clean technology to really sort of dive into people's backgrounds and careers to understand how people are really affecting and enhancing the race against carbon emissions and climate change. So I'm going to take you back maybe to the Accenture days, but can you talk us through a bit about your career and how you've ended up here with me today, really?
Yeah, absolutely. George, great to see you again, and thank you for the invite to do this. Yeah, a little bit about my career. It actually started before Accenture. That was actually the second company I worked with. When I graduated university, I had degrees in both engineering and business, and I started out in engineering, but it was probably about a year into it that it was fairly clear that I was actually going to be more successful and was better suited to be on the business side, even though I did love engineering. So I did start my career in an engineering role and then moving on to business. Probably another point about my career is I've worked only for a small handful of companies and really across just two industries. One industry is which I'm back into now, which is in HVAC and refrigeration. And then the other industry I worked with in was industrial compression. In fact, when you and I last spoke, I guess it was a little bit over a year ago, at that time I was the CEO of a company named Howden in industrial compression space. We've sold that business to a strategic investor, and that gave me the chance to move back to the U.S., which probably brings me to the third key point of my career, and probably something that's been a very significant part of my career, which is the fact that over the last 20 years, actually up until June of this year, I've lived outside the U.S. For the last 20 years. So I've lived in Singapore. I was in China for a dozen years, living in London as well, and then most recently in Scotland before moving back to the U.S. And that was a really great experience that I'd recommend to anyone that has the opportunity to go internationally and be immersed in a different culture. It's a great opportunity. Yeah. And then the fourth point, once we sold the business that I was based in Scotland for, I've moved back to the U.S. and I'm now the CEO of Copeland. Copeland is a great company. Coming out of being carved out of a conglomerate to become a standalone company, really focused on compression, controls, and components for the HVAC and refrigeration industry, and really technologies that make those offerings more sustainable in nature.
Yeah, fantastic. And then just going back to what you mentioned, the two industries that you have worked in for the majority of your career, was there a point in your career, or was there a thought process behind going into that sector, and what drives you to keep sort of pushing forward in the sector as well?
Yeah, what attracted me to both sectors, obviously they have a lot of differences and a number of similarities as well. But what was common between them that attracted me to both of them was two things. First, technology. Like I said, my bachelor's degree is in mechanical engineering, and I really like being part of technology companies. And both all the companies I've been with in both industries have that as a common denominator. And then secondly, and frankly, probably even more importantly, is I'm really passionate about being in companies that do good things for the world. More specifically, my career has been centered around energy efficiency early on, decarbonization, and more generally just combating climate change and moving towards carbon neutrality. And that really is the passion and a common denominator between both the Copeland business, the prior Howden business I was in, and frankly, other businesses I've been in throughout my career.
Fantastic. And then the next question is more around challenges. Obviously, you've worked for some fantastic businesses there, from Accenture in the early days to UTC, now at Copeland. If there's a couple of key challenges, or if there's any themes in sort of challenges that you've faced, and how have you overcome them and navigated those scenarios, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, business is full of day-to-day challenges. I think the way to approach it is actually, whether it be personal life or professional one, is candidly, I don't tend to see things as challenges. I tend to see them as opportunities or as problems to be solved. So that's probably a key to how I navigate challenges. And I think, again, even in taking it from a company perspective, even in good companies or great companies, I always see so many opportunities to make the business better, whether it be structural changes, process changes, cultural changes, or where a business is focused. So really one of the challenges is really prioritization and focus. And again, both personally and in running a business, it's about focusing your organization. It's about focusing the resources and focusing the people and the team on what matters most and what's really going to drive the most significant benefits for the business.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I completely agree. It's about focusing on the goal and the mission at hand. And that it perfectly fits into the next question, really. What is the biggest achievement, would you say, that you've had, maybe one or two, in relation to fighting climate change across the years?
Yeah, well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, kind of where we're at now in Copeland. And like I said, I've been in Copeland now for 4 months. I came in on day one of when it was acquired as part of a Blackstone portfolio company, carving out from another larger U.S. company. And it really is a great company. It's a company that's a leader in sustainable HVAC and refrigeration solutions. It's a company that's really in so many places and impacting the environment in so many ways. In the U.S., where about half of our business is located, we are the leader in compression in residential air conditioning units. The odds are that if you open up an air conditioning unit in the U.S., it's got a Copeland compressor inside. In the U.S. and frankly globally, we're in 2/3 of the supermarkets, where those supermarkets use our controls and our compressors to ensure energy efficiency. And so if you think about things that are going on in the world, compression technology is really key to both driving energy efficiency and also key to driving the transition to low GWP refrigerants. And so we're right in the center of that. And so in terms of a business, those are the things we've been involved with. But as I look forward, I get even more excited about the things that we can do as a company to drive energy efficiency and decarbonization and electrification across the world.
Yeah, fantastic. Is there any insights into sort of future projects in terms of decarbonisation that you can give?
Yeah, and it's interesting. When you and I talked last, as I mentioned, I was the CEO at Howden, and as you well know, Howden was a industrial compression business with a focus that business that we really started to focus on green power, including very specifically on green hydrogen. Now in Copeland, I'm on the other side of that green power industry. Instead of creating the hydrogen and creating green power, really making sure that end users and equipment and technologies are set up to be more green power efficient. And what that means in air conditioning, really big opportunity is in the heating segment, moving away from the use of fossil fuels as a primary source for heating and moving to heat pump technology. So with the heat pump technology, it's driving electrification, and it's that other piece of the puzzle, right? You can create green electricity, but then you've got to move things to green electricity, and heat pumps is a perfect example of how we can take a technology or an offering today that's more driven by fossil fuels for heating, driving it towards electrification, taking use of the green energy that's being produced for the grid. We believe that heat pumps have the potential to reduce CO2 emissions by 500 million tons by 2030. And it's an area where we're already well positioned. Homes, about 19 million homes and buildings around the world use our heat pump technology, but we see it as an area we can continue to invest in, an area that's going to continue to grow, and in the area that is really good for the world. Another area that we're very much involved with is through our controls, both in supermarkets and in houses, is demand response, right? So helping the grid balance demand, particularly important when you think about green power and hydrogen and solar and other sources of green power, making sure the demand on the grid is balanced. And that's another area that we're already involved with, but we see a lot of opportunity for continued growth.
Fantastic. Well, I imagine it sounds like it's going to be a very, very busy time moving forward for you. In terms of going back to yourself, I'm going to take you a little while back. I'm going to take you to that first day in terms of strapping the boots up, maybe graduating and starting that first career moment, I would say. If you could look back and give sort of 3 key pieces of advice to yourself or people starting the career in sustainable technologies, what would they be?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'd say it's not mistakes I made along the way, but it's actually things I learned as key things that I probably wish I would have learned earlier on, and advice I give to people that are starting in their careers. One is just the power of relationships, whether it be networks or whether it be mentors. The relationships you form on a day-to-day basis and throughout your career are absolutely critical. They're very different, networks and mentors, but from a network perspective, business doesn't get done without partnerships. And so networks are key to those partnerships. You just don't know who you're going to meet today, and if that relationship you're forming today is going to lead to something that's going to be powerful for the company and powerful for the industry. And then, secondly, very important is just the power of mentors. I've been very fortunate throughout my career to have worked for a number of great people that I still have very strong relationships with, that are still what I consider my mentors, or individuals that if I'm experiencing something either in personal life or professional life, I know I can pick up the phone, have an open conversation with them, and get great feedback. So relationships is one. Probably the other one I really focus on as well when I talk to people earlier stage in their career is pursue experiences, not titles. All the experiences that you gather throughout your career will eventually come together, and that's what really creates opportunities for you. As an example, 20 years ago when I first made the decision to move outside the U.S., I took an assignment that was really a lateral move within my company, and that lateral move, wasn't a step up the ladder, but it was something that gave me, a different experience. It really has been a very center point of my career. I think just too many people get focused on the titles and progressing up the ladder, but what I really emphasize is get experiences, and those experiences are great new opportunities for you. And it's interesting. I think it was Steve Jobs that had an expression that said, "Have faith in the dots," is what he said. And think about the dots as experiences, or the experiences as the dots of your life. And as you go through life, those dots, those experiences will start to connect. And it's interesting because what he said was, you'll never know how they connect when you look forward. You only start to realize how they connect when you look backwards. And I'm a big believer of that, is collect dots, collect experiences. As you move through your career, it's all going to make sense as you progress. And then probably the third one is one that I maybe didn't always do as well, but I always have to remind myself, which is enjoy the journey. We talked about business challenges that are almost day to day, and there are challenges, and not every day seems enjoyable, if you will, as you're going through some of those challenges. But those challenges are the experience, and it's hard not to be stressed sometimes as you're going through the day to day. But you really have to enjoy the journey of what you're doing, because it's those things that are sometimes the most stressful things that you're going through in your career that, frankly, are the most meaningful in terms of accomplishment and experience for you.
Fantastic. A lot of great insight there, and a lot of great things to learn from as well. Finally, to finish off, so 2023 in Europe anyway, has been the year of skills, and I think we can both agree that in order for us to keep developing at the rate we are, that our sort of sector, it really needs to look at different industries to draw upon skill sets, right? So if you were in another industry, if you're in oil and gas, or you're in a more traditional sector, what advice would you give those looking to transition into the space?
Yeah, I think I think as you look at my career, my experiences, I think one thing that I think should stand out people is that there are many careers and many companies involved in doing things to help decarbonize, the planet, and stop climate change. Again, I've been on, as I mentioned, on the power generation side. I've been now on the demand side, and there's so many different companies. There's so many different careers. What I would recommend to people is think about what you're passionate about, right? Whether it's on green hydrogen or whether it's on electrification, think about where the passion is. Think about what role you want to play in that, and then pursue it, right? Leverage your network, find out more about those companies that are involved in that space, and pursue what you're passionate about. I think what really comes across when I meet people that are looking at careers in my company or in other companies is, do they understand, or are they really passionate about coming into that business, because that's a part of what they want to contribute to. So again, there's so many opportunities. Pick the ones that you want to do and become passionate about it, and then leverage your network, and that passion will show through and will lead to success.
Yeah. Fantastic. I think that's great advice to anyone tuning in and anyone in general, really. As long as I've always had the mantra, if you do think you like, you should end up in a good spot, right? So it's so true. And yeah, thanks again for jumping on for the second time. It's great to sort of dive into who Ross Shuster is really and how you've got to where you've got to. I think it's super inspirational and there's a lot of takeaways. So yeah, really appreciate it and wish you all the best with Copeland. I imagine it's a busy time ahead and I'm looking forward to keep watching your journey as well.
Appreciate that, George. Fantastic. Thank you for inviting me to do this again. It's great to see you and talk to you again.
Brilliant. Thanks.